Thank you very much for joining me on the Job Scam Report. This is Mark Anthony Dyson. If this is the first time you're joining me, thank you very much for joining me on my podcast, or my video podcast. I guess that's what we're calling it now. If you want to know more about me, like I said, you can go to markanthonydyson.substack.com and you'll find many articles, videos, and podcasts, particularly audio podcasts, and perhaps you might even enjoy the podcast what I do with my two co-hosts, Ashley Price Horton and Jay Jones, and I'm doing this solo today, so hopefully you'll get a lot of value out of it. And I just want to present some information that's just been published by both the Federal Trade Commission and the Better Business Bureau. Maybe this will help you glean some of the measures that you may need to take for 2025, because 2024 was absolutely wild as far as job scams and scammers, and them using all the tools that they have at their disposal are the ones that we have too. It is a scary year this year because job scams have not slowed down. And in fact, they've intensified, especially if we learned anything from last year, as employment goes to do job scams. As people want to change jobs, or if they've been laid off, or if they faced long-term unemployment, job scams are right there, increasing in nature and intensely trying to get people to fall victims to their schemes. Everybody has to be vigilant. And really, if there's a problem that's hit everybody at some point of last year, multiple times, it is job scams or side gigs, or for the fact that they are behaving in such a way that they're using fake recruiters and fake hiring managers to lure you into these schemes. Now, keep in mind that that schemes involves social engineering, in which they're depending on your inability to process information logically and rationally, especially when you hear ridiculously high dollar per hour jobs or side jobs with plenty of PTO, or being able to work flexibly from your home. And it's ridiculously easy task that anyone can do, even your children perhaps could even do, for such a high amount. And it's always a special job. So we know that they behave in such a way that they try to make it real simple, but they play on your feeling anxiety, having been laid off in such a way, and facing some of that trauma, as well as being a long-term unemployed worker. Or maybe you might be someone that has quit the job and that they're on a side gig, and they're trying to build the side gig but need to make some extra cash. They play on those factors too. So hopefully you'll be able to glean something from these numbers and from this data that I'm going to read, and this will inform your thoughts even further. And then I'll give some actionable tips where you can go and apply it to your job search this year, 2025. And these are the things that we learned from 2024. Now, first, I'll run through the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, and see some of their data. So I'm going to be reading some of them. $750.6 million loss total of, and this is just Americans. That's up from $250 million from 2023. Job employment agency scams reported 3 times more scams than from what was done from 2020 to 24. They continue to use email, text, and phone were top methods scammers used to reach victims. Consumers' reported loss to job scams jumped from $90 million to $501 million, and that in percentage is 457%. That's more than 5 times the amount that were actually lost. As far as, again, this is dollar amount. We learned last year from other studies, and I'll try to link to that, where younger people were actually scammed more frequent, and we'll see that frequency show up in the Better Business Bureau report. But the amount, a lot of the amount is on the older workers, those who are 45 on up, who actually lost more money. And we've seen news reports where they have lost it, with older people losing six-figure amounts, and even more than that in some cases. And yes, a lot of it was dollars, a lot of it was cryptocurrency, and there's a lot of argument of what the worth is of all that, but for a lot of people that was worth a lot of money, and it's a big investment. And some people did lose their retirement savings and all that. Again, that dollar amount is probably attributed, if we learned anything from the surveys that were done last year, that the older people are responsible for the amount that were lost, and they probably lost the bulk of that. Here's some numbers from the BBB. The employment scam reports remain the number 2 scam type in 2024, making up about 14% of all reported scams. Employment scams had 1,500 thousand median loss. In other words, the average amount, even though it's been a varying amount, people, when they lost that cash, was $1,500. Now, just to highlight something here, that your data and your personal information is a whole lot more worth than $1,500, because people have been scammed and scammed to the point to where cars were gotten their names, homes were gotten their names, hard credit checks and credit card losses, money spent on that. That's a lot of money for just most of us, or any of us, but that's the median loss. Employment scams were the number 1 riskiest for ages 18-34. According to the survey, research, the flexibility to work from home was the top motivational factor for engaging with scammers. Now, here are some things that we could probably learn from that. And even last year in 2024, about 2023, employment scams were considered number 2 overall. It's still number 2 now. And we know that being that we have AI, scammers can use that to generate more scams a whole lot quickly, and to disperse that and use the AI tools to build bots or digital robots to be able to use to scam not just individuals, but they also are trying to be fake employees of companies to scam money out of them. And that gets a little bit more complicated. We'll get to that to another time, but you can read some of the past articles where I had discussed that. The issue is our vigilance. How we're watching and paying attention to what's going on with the communication with people that were applying to lots of jobs, and of course, the mass applying to a lot of jobs. More than likely, you are giving away some of your very personal assets as far as your information. And I understand that people are trying to get jobs and they need jobs, and some people are desperate. They're anxious. They want to transition very quickly. Some people are trying to get out of situations with a toxic employer, and they want to find something new before they move on. So they're willing to take almost anything. And really, that's not the best idea, the best way to go about a job search, because that just makes you more vulnerable. So if you're mass applying to $100 per week, or a couple of weeks, or even a month, it's hard to find out, or it's hard to really look at employers individually, make sure that they are actually employers. Some of those were likely that you applied to were scams, and that you gave them more information that they should have at their fingertips. And we can argue how much they actually have before you apply to a job. But nevertheless, people are mass applying. They're not only checking out the employer. They're willing to do anything. And for some people, that's literally it. So they're giving away their personal information. That personal information is a whole lot more than the $1,500. That's the average loss of people, because again, scammers can go and get more money and not only do cash damage to you, but can also do reputation damage in the sense of that they have enough information to become you, run up credit reports, credit card charges, and all kinds of frivolous charges that you wouldn't spend. And that's not to say that credit card companies would be helpful, but it's not as easy to get that money back once it's been lost. But why would you want to put it in the hands of scammers in the first place? So here's some tips that you should probably consider before you go and apply to a lot of jobs. And I was just talking with somebody who's a big fan of the job scam report this morning about what they can do to help them and help job seekers apply to jobs a little bit more safely. And one of the things we talked about is not putting the address on your resume. Definitely don't do that. If you send a scammer your resume and has an address, it just makes you more vulnerable. And you probably don't want to put it in just anybody's hands anyway. The employer, when you first apply to a job, unless it's that specifically located in your area, you don't need to put the address. You could put the city and state and maybe the zip code, just so that they know that you're in the area, but you don't have to put your address. You can also use a Google Voice or a email number to mask your real number. And with the amount of Zelle scams that have happened over the past couple of years, your number is an asset. It's not something that you want to just give to anybody and put in the hands of any scammer or really any employer unless you want them to add that information. So use those two tools. The difference between Google Voice and Umail is Umail you'll need to pay. Google Voice is free. There's other tools that you could use with Umail to help you even manage your job search. And I really recommend that. You can go to umail.com to get that information about it. If you have an Apple phone, you wouldn't be able to use that for your Apple, but you can use it for your Android and everything else outside of Apple. In fact, they have a list of phones or a list of carriers of who they work with and what will be their compatibility. The other thing is that you don't put your personal information. People will put references, their resume. I don't know how they do that, but I don't think that's something that you should do. This is too much information. And as well as that, there's a lot of personal information about your employment that's really on the resume that's really sacred. You don't want to give that to an employer, and what I would say is that you should make sure that somebody's intent to hire is authentic rather than somebody who's just asking for a resume. It could be quite dangerous to your financial health if you do that. There's several other things you probably do. I'm just listing a few of them. And basically, I'm encouraging you to be much more vigilant than you ever had before. Scammers are using the tools that we have accessible to us. So you think about, you have video, you're able to use voicemail and text and email. And all those things, they are using that as well as they're still calling you. And those are the primary things that they're using as tools. As we see more excitement build around the tech that's coming up in the future, scammers are going to use that to leverage it to get to you and to get your personal information. And as authentic as some of the scammers may be in their communication with you, there are always signs of somebody that is a little bit off. But when you feel that inclination, you should disengage and you should stop communication. You should report and block them, because more than likely it is. There's hardly anybody that I know that feels that the communication was off, or there's something off about the person that's communicating with you or the scammer that they're engaging with you that has gone. I have yet to meet that person. I hear a lot from people. I see a lot on the LinkedIn streets and the social media streets, and they're not shy in approaching anyone to make something sound like the real thing. But really, again, They're relying on how you're feeling, and those people who are often victims are the ones who are feeling the depression, anxiety, and stress of the job search or long-term unemployment. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening to me and watching me on video. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, Mark at Dyson, on all of the platforms. And you could probably get a hold of me as well on my Substack. That's markanthonydyson.substack.com. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining me on the Job Scam Report, and feel free to download it, tell your friends about it. And if you want to know deeply about how to avoid scams and learn where they come from and keep up with all the information, especially if it's something that you feel as passionate about as I do, then subscribe to my Substack. $5 a month will get you access to all the articles, videos, and podcasts that are available there. Thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day.